What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and fantasy football draft season is behind us. Week 1 is upon us, which means it's time to set our lineup. So today, I am going to rank my top 37 running backs for week 1 of the fantasy football season. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. We are going to go player by player, tier by tier. As always, I feel stronger about the tier breaks between each group of running backs than I do running back 1 versus running back 2. At that point, we are splitting hairs. Now, this is going to be for full PPR. You can absolutely use it for half PPR as well. And I will say it's week 1, all right? We do not have much data. We have no trends to go off of. We have Fugazi unofficial depth charts put out by the team interns. It is the wild, wild west right now. We are operating really off of Las Vegas projections and odds markets, and vibes is really what it comes down to here. Now, I will say, we're going to go through my top 37 today. If you want my top, I'm going to go probably 50 to 60 running backs deep on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart, where I'll have my top 50 running backs, 60 wide receivers, flex rankings, all that good stuff every single week, along with the waiver wire article and rest of season rankings, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find that in the description and the comment section down below. But this first tier is the stardom if you got them tier. All right, these are high-end RB1s. If you have them on your team, find a way to get them into your lineup. At RB1 overall, Saquon Barkley at home versus Dallas. They lose Micah Parsons. It's going to be tough sledding. Then we have Christian McCaffrey on the road versus the Seahawks. If you draft McCaffrey, it's because when he's healthy, his projection is pretty much the highest on the board. He's healthy. He's playing. You put him in your lineup. Bijan, you took him in the top 6. He is at home versus Tampa Bay. In a dome, he projects for a ton of volume. Then we have Jahmyr Gibbs. I will say a little bit of a warning on the Lions this week. The Lions only are projected for the 16th most points on the road versus the Packers. That's uncharacteristic for the Lions, but it's still Jahmyr Gibbs. He's still electric. He's still going to get touches. Just something to think about when you are thinking through these Lions this week. Then we have Chase Brown as our RB5 on the road in Cleveland. The Bengals are projected for the second most points by Vegas this week, minus 5.5 point favorites. He is going to get 20 touches, probably score a touchdown. It's going to be a good game script for Chase Brown. Then Bucky Irving is my RB6 on the road in Atlanta in a dome. The Bucs are projected for the 8th most points this week, and the Falcons have the 32nd ranked defensive line by Establish the Run. Then we'll go RB7, the big dog, Derrick Henry on the road versus Buffalo. It's a tough matchup just in terms of the Buffalo Bills being a pretty good run defense, but this is the highest over-under game of the entire slate, projected for 50.5 points, and Derrick Henry probably scores a touchdown. Then we'll go with Jonathan Taylor, who is going to be at home versus Miami. The Colts are home favorites versus a bad Miami defense. This offense probably goes as far as Jonathan Taylor goes. Then we have Josh Jacobs at home versus Detroit. Home favorites. The RB2 is like Chris Brooks or Emmanuel Wilson. He's going to get all the touches in the world in a favorable game script. And then our last running back in this tier is the RB10, Ashton Jeanty, on the road versus New England. Usually starting a rookie in week 1 is a little shaky, but if anyone's going to project for 15 to 20 touches, it is Ashton Jeanty. Now, moving on from that, we're going to go to our high-end RB2 tier, which are guys that I still want to get in my lineup, but maybe you're debating RB2 versus another RB2 in this same tier, or debating it versus a wide receiver in your flex. So first up at RB11, we have Devon Achane. And really the only reason he's not in the stardom if you got him tier is just about this calf injury. As of right now, he's returned to practice. He's on track to play on Sunday, but you never know. He could tweak something and leave the game. He could suffer a setback this week in practice. He could, I don't know. There's just a very wide range of outcomes. They could also maybe have him on a little bit of a pitch count where maybe they, instead of like a 18 plus touch workload, that's more like a 12 to 15. So just things to think through. He's going to be on the road against the Colts in a pretty favorable matchup. Then at RB12, we have Alvin Kamara. This is why you drafted him. Early season production is what Alvin Kamara does. I believe over the last 3 years, weeks 1 through 8, he's averaged 20 plus points per game. He's going to be at home versus the Cardinals here. Then we have RB13 on the other side of that game, James Conner. The Cardinals are projected for the 11th most points this week versus a New Orleans defense that allowed the 5th most points to running backs last season. Of course, that's not going to be a one-for-one transfer over because things change year to year on defenses, but it should be a good matchup for James Conner. RB14, we have Chuba Hubbard. Really good matchup. He's going to be on the road versus the Jaguars, who allowed the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs last season. Hubbard should get all the volume in the world early on in the year. RB15, give me James Cook. He has a tough matchup at home versus Baltimore, but it's similar to Derrick Henry where both of these defenses are good, but there should also be a lot of points in this game. So if you give me a home favorite projected for the third most points in a given week, James Cook should be somebody in your lineup. RB16, we have Kenneth Walker at home versus the 49ers. They're projected for only the 22nd most fantasy points, but San Francisco was a bottom 10 fantasy defense against the run. I will say they do have Robert Saleh this year. That could be different, but Kenneth Walker is in a decent spot here in week 1. Then give me Kyren Williams at home versus the Texans. The Texans are a tough matchup, but Kyren Williams should get a decent amount of volume. Now, moving on from that, we have our low-end RB2s. These are guys I feel decent about, right? Either like rookies that are uncertain or just guys that are probably in your RB2 spot on like a hero RB build. I would want to keep these guys out of my flex spot if I could, is really what I'm trying to say here. But at RB18, and I think this kind of strays from consensus, I have Isaiah Pacheco. He's going to be on the road versus the Chargers. The Chargers have the 31st best defensive line by Establish the Run. The Chiefs have the 10th highest implied total. They should score a lot of points. There's going to be touchdown opportunity and a positive game script. I think Pacheco makes a lot of sense this week. Now, I was actually surprised to have TreVeyon Henderson, especially over Amari and Hampton this week, but I think it makes sense. Henderson is going to be a home favorite versus this Las Vegas defense. I know that he's listed as RB3 on the depth chart behind, I think, Gibson and Ramondre. I'm just not really buying any of the noise of these unofficial depth charts, if I'm being completely honest with you. Yes, there's uncertainty about his touch floor, but it is a really good environment for big plays and touchdowns this week. Then we have RB20, Amari and Hampton at home versus the Chiefs. The Chiefs allowed the least amount of fantasy points to running backs last year. I want to see how much volume Najee Harris gets in week 1, but he still should be a fine RB2. Now, Tony Pollard at RB21, he's somebody that'll probably be higher, but like moving forward, but going against Denver on the road, that defense is really tough. They're 32nd in terms of implied points, so the lowest touchdown chances of any running back this week, but Tony Pollard is kind of the only man standing in this backfield and will get plenty of touches here. RB22, I have Aaron Jones on the road versus Chicago. The Vikings are projected for the 16th most points this week. Not anything crazy. We'll see what the Bears look like this year. He should be a fine back-end RB2. RB23, I have Tyrone Tracy. This should be, in theory, where Tracy sees his biggest workload. Scatabo, late start with the hamstring injury. It should be the Tyrone Tracy's show early on the road versus Washington, who, as of late, hasn't been the best run defense on paper. Then at RB24, we have Breece Hall, and what is going to be the ugliest game of the week, the Steelers versus the Jets at MetLife. Right now, there's reports, too, and I only know this because I'm local in Jersey, but it's going to potentially rain on Sunday as well. And this is the lowest over-under of the week at 38.5. The next highest is 42.5. Just to give you an idea of how bad the offensive showing is projected to be in this game. The Steelers' defensive line is also really good. You're really just hoping for some like 2-minute drill cheese reception PPR scam from Breece Hall in this game. RB25, you have DeAndre Swift. We'll see how the Vikings are this year, but last year their secondary was so bad they were a run funnel, or no, they were a pass funnel, where the secondary was so bad that they actually ended up being a top 3 defense against fantasy running backs because teams would just throw on their secondary. We'll see if that sticks, but for now, if it does, Swift is a tough start. Then our last running back in this tier, the RB26, David Montgomery. Things get questionable in this range. Once we get to high-end RB3 and low-end RB3s, we're talking about players that don't have secure roles and you're kind of guessing. David Montgomery, we know what he is, what he's going to do as the second running back for the Detroit Lions. He should get, 12 touches. He should get maybe a couple of goal line attempts and be A-okay in your RB2 spot. Then next up, we have the high-end RB3s. These are guys that in hero RB builds you can put in your RB2 spot, but I would probably stay away from flexing any of these running backs. Unless you're in a deep league or you're down bad. And at RB27 and 28, it's a little bit of a cop-out to just put both Broncos running backs, but we don't know how the split is going to get distributed or what it's going to look like. But at this point, we don't know the split across the board for any of these running backs. They are home favorites projected for the 5th most points versus the Titans. It should be a plus matchup for both of these running backs. It's just there's a lot of uncertainty. We could easily see one of these guys score like 16 points and another score 4. We'll truly just have to see how this split goes early on. Then at RB29, we have Travis Etienne, another one where very uncertain. If Tank Bigsby out-touched him in week 1, it wouldn't shock me, but for now, he's at home versus Carolina, which should be a good matchup for him at RB29. Then at RB30, Austin Ekeler at home versus the Giants. Washington's projected for the 3rd most points as a home favorite, but that doesn't exactly benefit Ekeler's style, who probably benefits more from, 2-minute drill and a up-tempo game where Washington might be trailing for parts. If they do just dominate the Giants, I do wonder what Ekeler's role looks like here. Then we have Jaylen Warren at the New York Jets as our RB31. This might feel a little bit low, but I still do think Caleb Johnson will be involved. I think even Kenneth Gainwell will be involved. And then also, again, the Jets defense is pretty good, and this is the lowest over-under of the week. So the touchdown potential for Warren is pretty rough. I know he got the extension, but it's just a really rough game environment. Then we'll get to our low-end RB3s. These are you're kind of, sending up a Hail Mary starting these guys, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do. We have Ramondre Stevenson at RB32. If there was ever a time to start Ramondre, it would be early season as a home favorite, projected for the 15th most points versus Las Vegas. Then we have Nick Chubb. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Right now, he is the presumed RB1 for the Texans. We'll see if that sticks. We'll see how many touches Dameon Pierce or Woody Marks gets. But on the road versus the Rams, not a great matchup, but you're just kind of buying into 12 to 15 touches and hoping that Nick Chubb still has a little bit of juice left. Similar deal with Javonte. He was somebody that was damn near unstartable last year. I have him as my RB34 on the road versus the Eagles. It should be a really, really tough matchup, but he is another guy you can kind of set and forget for 12-plus touches, but I don't know how good those touches are going to be. Then we have a bit of a curveball. At RB35, I have Bill Krosky-Merritt. I know that the depth chart just came out, and he's listed as the RB4. Again, the depth charts, I just don't really care. We'll see how much playing time Bill gets early on, but this would be the environment for him to do well. Again, at home versus the Giants, big favorites, projected for the 3rd most points on the week. If it is a positive game script where they're leading the entire time, Bill could absolutely make some noise in your RB2 spot. Then we have Jerome Ford. This one's tough. At home versus the Bengals, we'll see how much of a role he has versus Dylan Sampson. I think it's going to be a lot more of a split than people might think, but he is somebody that you can start early if you would like to. And then at RB37, we have Tank Bigsby. I said again, it wouldn't shock me if he out-touched Travis Etienne, which then if that happened, he'd be somebody in this range, or up here. So if you want to take that swing at RB37 and you're down bad, I think Tank Bigsby isn't a bad start at home versus the Panthers. Now, that is going to do it for us today. Definitely a shorter video, or no, I'll actually leave this open for you guys. A shorter video, but I'm not going to go deeper than 37 running backs in week 1. And then also, I just don't have, you guys know me, I'm a big data guy. I'm usually showing graphics of things to look at, and it's just we don't really have anything. There isn't really, it's all just projection right now. There is nothing. I will say, in terms of just kind of heuristics and rules to follow when it comes to fantasy football in week 1 is don't get too cute. Start your studs. Don't, start Bill Krosky-Merritt over Isaiah Pacheco or do something dumb. Don't sit, I don't know, what Pat Surtain is playing against Calvin Ridley. Don't sit Calvin Ridley because of that. Just play your best lineup. Don't get too cute. And then we readjust from there when we actually get some real data to mess around with and some real usage to mess around with, because when you do get into this high-end RB3 territory, if you guys remember, something that always sticks out in my mind is the Rams versus the Bills Thursday Night Football in 2022. Cam Akers was a guy we were all drafting inside the top 5 rounds, and then Darrell Henderson out-touches him. Weird things happen all the time, and the deeper you get into these running back rankings, the more that just something squirrely could happen where, again, if Tank Bigsby out-touched Etienne, it wouldn't shock me. There's just a lot of different things that can happen late. Even if it wouldn't shock me if Miles Sanders out-touched Javonte. There's just some really weird things that can happen. All of this is very fragile. Don't get too cute. And good luck in week 1, fellas. We should have a wide receiver rankings video tomorrow. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. And if you want my entire week 1 rankings, that'll be out on Thursday over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. You can find the description and the comment section down below. But if you can't support there, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm